All right. Oh, this is just my utility that checks if the internet is okay. Um, all right. So after our last meeting 2 weeks ago, um, we talked about I think 4 open questions. I didn't really get a chance to update the cap, but I still have my notes on what we decided from the last conversation, and then I can quickly make an update today based on if we still feel like the answers we discussed last time are valid, and we can proceed from there. Other than that, I don't think there is else to kind of discuss unless someone has something that they want to bring up. Um, it's really the ball is in my court where I just have to and bring it to Michelle's attention. Uh, does anyone have any questions? Sweet. Okay. It was about protocol last time. We were talking about protocol, which is currently in the bucket class. We were talking about moving it to the bucket claim. The idea being that it's the application that knows what protocol it wants to talk to. And so there should be some mechanism for that's running the application, say using a bucket, the one that uses the bucket claim to specify what protocol bucket should support. So we had a lengthy discussion last time. I just went over the video from the last meeting, and we decided that the protocol should indeed be in the bucket claim where you can specify based on the application what protocol you want this bucket to talk to support, and we decided also to get rid of it in the bucket class. Um,
Hello, sorry I'm late. Is anyone here?
pausing here.
Sid, you're cutting in and out.
Your audio is quite bad, Sid.
Oh, sorry. All right, I'm finding a better spot. Give me 1 second. All right, hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, okay. It should be better now. Right by the router. Let's see. All right, so I'll have this running in the background. It just does pings regularly and just measures the average round trip time and loss. All right, this should, yeah, it's already better. Okay. All right, so let's get back to this. So is my audio better now? Now that I'm in a better spot?
It's perfect.
Just wondering. Okay, sweet. All right, so my question was about, okay, so to give you an update, Ben, after last week, I started on my travel, so I didn't really get a chance to update the cap. It's been 2 weeks. I still have my notes on what we discussed last time. I thought we could go over the solutions we came up with last time and just see if we're all on the same page still, or if maybe some questions popped up based on the decisions we made. And then if everything looks good, I can go and update the cap today. That's kind of how I started the meeting. So the goal here today is just to go over the solutions we discussed last time and see if we're still on the same page. It'll also give me a chance to kind of remind myself of everything that we talked about, so that I can update the cap correctly. Yeah. So the first question was about protocol. Last time we talked, we said that we can actually move protocol out of bucket class, since it's the application that really needs to specify the protocol, and bucket class is not something that the application writer ever gets to control. That was the idea behind having protocol, move to bucket claim instead of having it in bucket class. That's what we discussed last time. And any questions on that, or are we still on this, with the same idea of the same idea?
Sounds good.
All right. So
Still,
sounds good. Yeah. Okay. I don't think that I don't expect there to be much changes, but given I haven't had the chance really to update the cap, I figure we might as well really go over the decisions again, because there's only 4 questions really, and other than that, if anyone wants to discuss anything else, we can talk about it. But yeah, we'll go over the questions again. This should be quick. There's a spelling mistake here. I'll fix that. But coming back to this, yeah. So the second question was in the bucket access class. Should there be a driver name? We kind of went back and forth on this. I think I was saying that there could be a possible mismatch between the driver name in bucket and the bucket access class. If there was this provision, but that's a user error or admin error, so it's okay. We can throw a meaningful error message, and that should do. That's what we kind of decided, and we decided to get add driver name in bucket access class as well, just like it is in bucket class. So again, we're good on this decision too, right?
yeah, I don't see why not.
Okay. Just opening it up. All right. The next one is, where does this account name come from? This was more of a just how does it work kind of question. I think we decided we'll change the name of this field from account name to account ID, I think. And that way, it's clear. So account name is provided in the response to grant access, which is a gRPC call to the actual driver. So it's supposed to return an account ID or a unique string that's used for idempotent gRPC calls. So that if you call grant access twice, or if you call, if you don't want to end up creating multiple credentials for one bucket or for one bucket access. That was the
But
idea
for
behind.
idempotency, it's the client that has to generate the ID, not the server. And yes, we had talked about changing it, not account ID, but like maybe access ID or credential ID or something. But it would be a unique string generated by the client, not returned by from the server.
When you say the client, you mean the driver client, right? Not
I mean the
Kubernetes
container
client.
orchestrator, like the sidecar.
So if we were
Sidecar
to
is
do
the
that,
client.
then if we were to do that, then the issue is if the driver gets restarted, or if the client gets restarted, it needs to have that state saved somewhere.
Right, it has to be
As
something
in,
that's in the Kubernetes object. So we had talked about maybe using the UUID of the bucket access or something. So yeah, it wouldn't be literally generated by the client. It would be something the client had reliable access to.
So then that would put the responsibility on the driver to keep the state, then saying if this UUID, if you already provisioned, set of credentials, don't do it again. Right?
That's how it is with CSI, right?
I mean, wouldn't it be easier? So with buckets, we already know the access pattern is to have an identifier for the accessor, like an access ID. So couldn't we just use that, which is which can be expected as a response to grant access?
Maybe, I don't know. I worry about races.
How so? Can you?
The possibility that an ID can get generated and then lost, or it can get sent and then forgotten about, and that there's sequences of events where like the client can send an API to the server and then not hang around for the response and then later come back and not remember what it was doing. It probably could be worked around. I'm just saying, like, CSI uses stuff that's generated on the client side. You could potentially use something generated on the server side, but then you can only get one of them, right? Like if I want to grant access on the same bucket to like 3 different clients, what are the 3 different access IDs or idempotency keys that you would use for those 3 separate access calls? You need something that's
Sorry, can you repeat
different,
that?
but if you have a bucket and you want to grant access to 3 different clients,
Right.
what 3 idempotency keys do you use for those 3 individual calls that are guaranteed to be distinct, but also known to the client reliably?
Wouldn't that be the account ID of the account that it just created?
Maybe.
So,
I mean, I guess I just want to see a POC of this working. I guess that would put to bed a lot of concerns. Is
okay.
just an example of it actually working, and then you could look at it and try to break it. You're probably right that we could use something else.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm just thinking about AWS and Minio as an example, and in both cases, there is a unique key per accessor per set of credentials, which is the user ID. So my idea was, the response to or this account ID or access ID, whatever we end up calling it, this field would contain that name. So I still see the race problem here, where you could end up creating 2 driver grant access could end up being called twice. I don't even think that's possible actually. Actually, that concern doesn't exist. If we build the container orchestrator side of Cozy well, actually this should work, right? Like if we just asked for the idempotency key back from the driver, stuff like the account ID for AWS and Minio, or project ID in case of Azure, and
but the driver doesn't have any state. So if you make a call and it returns back an error,
right?
now you want to retry.
When a
you need
driver,
a key that
no, it doesn't matter if there's an error. If there's an error, it's the same as it never got provisioned. That's so. So the idea is the driver has to go and try to create an account based on the specifications provided, and if it created the account successfully, then it sends the account ID back to Cozy, which just persists it in the bucket access object.
And what if it hangs?
Then it never succeeded. Let's say there's a timeout of 30 seconds. Let's just coming up with a random number here. Then it didn't succeed. Then you call again, and so you're saying there's a possibility of 2 different calls.
Yeah, I mean, in CSI, the concern is always you send a request to create an object. You either get success or failure or timeout. In the success case, you're good. In the failure case, you're also good. In the timeout case, you're screwed because now you may or may not have created something and you don't know how to refer to the thing you created. And so you have to retry with the same.
For the driver?
It's a concern for the user, who doesn't want to leak resources, right? Because what happens if you don't clean up that mess in the case of a timeout is you just leak resources. And now someone has to go clean them up. So the
Yeah,
whole principle behind the idempotency key is it gives you something that you can retry with in the case of a timeout and know that you're referring to the same object every time you retry until you eventually get a success or a clear error back from the driver that says it definitely doesn't exist, go away.
I see what you're saying. We still pass in a unique key, which is the bucket access name, or the bucket access UUID. It's still there. It's just the meaning of this field account ID. I guess I see what you're saying. I think Aaron was saying something, or Blaine maybe.
yeah, I was just I guess agreeing with Ben. We actually just had an issue that I was looking at recently in Rook Upstream where if there is a, like quite literally a timeout creating like a bucket user, it ends up causing some problems when we come back and do that operation again, because we can assume that that operation like failed because of the timeout, but actually the underlying system still has registered that it exists. And then we come back again the next time with a different ID and then have like the bucket resource ends up having been owned by the previous user instead of the like newly generated user. And I think solving this issue from the COSI level would help prevent other drivers from having having the same underlying issue.
That's a really good point.
I think it's not possible to completely get rid of the, this problem just from COSI level. If you look at the external provisioner, there are actually fixes to prevent leaking resources. But then like in our driver, we still have our extra code just to make sure that does not happen. It has a lot to do with your driver itself as well, the storage system.
Yeah.
The weakness of
Definitely.
COSI is, or the weakness of CSI is that although we have proper idempotency keys to prevent leaking resources, you are required to retry your creates until you get a success or an error message. And then if you get a success, you have to delete it. Because yeah, if you get a timeout, you can't just walk away.
Yeah, CSI has those built in already. So CSI expose external provisioner and snapshotter, we have those extra.
Yeah, I'm just saying like,
to avoid this problem.
The weakness is,
but your drive is still a lot of time also depending on your storage system. Like we actually still have to do extra things in our driver to prevent this from happening. So it depends on how the driver is handling this or how your storage system is handling this. So
I see. I think it's reasonable to. Okay, so what idempotency key are we talking about in case of CSI? Are we talking about volume creation?
Creation, deletion, those should all be idempotent. All those actions, all of those operations should be idempotent.
I see. In this case, right, we want the same for bucket creation and also for access creation. So Blaine, the problem you brought up, so was the issue that the timeout eventually succeeded, but you're already exited from the timeout. Is it okay to expect the driver to either cancel in-flight requests or delete canceled in-flight requests? What I'm trying to ask is, let's say the timeout elapsed and COSI broke the connection, the gRPC connection. Is it reasonable to expect the driver to just undo whatever it started?
I think COSI should still try, should still keep retrying. COSI level, you should also handle idempotency, basically. Just similar to what we're doing in external provisioning, external snapshotter.
I see.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it could be a kind of both situation where like it seems like that's probably not an uncommon like scenario, that particular one. And so if COSI has mechanisms to help prevent it, like in the specific case that I have seen, if COSI was like, okay, we're just gonna say the user ID or the user ID for this bucket is going to be X randomly generated, then the underlying system has a way of then being like, okay, like if this fails because of a retry, like we can come back and try it again and then see that the same user exists. It also seems totally reasonable for me, because the user ID in some ways Cozy doesn't care about. If Cozy were like, okay, driver, generate me a user ID that is guaranteed to be unique in your system, and then it gets it back and then it sets that information for the next request. Like that seems like a good flow to me. It increases the back and forth, but I think that is possibly a good balance between the two, where Cozy kind of is designed to help the underlying system avoid this particular class of issue. But certainly, yes, I also agree every driver is going to have their own failure cases that they do have to deal with, and Cozy can't be expected to handle the minutia of how is Ceph different from AWS, from Minio.
Yeah, I think that's a very well thought out response. Looking at the driver grant bucket access call a little bit more, we do pass it in as BAR dash UUID of the BAR itself. Sorry, bucket access. The BAR doesn't exist anymore. The bucket access request doesn't exist anymore. So this would be bucket access dash UUID and just bucket dash UUID here. So given that, I think it should be good enough. So the flow we're kind of hinting at here is we pass in the bucket access UUID as the uniqueness key, as the idempotency key, and then the driver itself responds with an account ID, which could be potentially different. And if so, we pass that. Oh, actually no. Okay, here's what's going on. So in the request, we pass in an account name, and then the response we expect an account ID, and the account ID is what we use in subsequent calls to the driver. So the idempotency key for grant access is account name, which is a UID of the BA, the bucket access, and the subsequent idempotency key for all access-related operations would be the account ID. I think that's what we had decided on. That would work, right?
Right, but you don't have to store the
account ID,
the account name. Oh no, okay, right. This is the gRPC layer, right? At the Kubernetes layer, there is no field called account name because it's just the UUID.
Correct.
Okay, and so then we're just quibbling about what is the field called. Account name is not the right. Well, I guess it could be. Yeah, if you want the account name to be called, bar dash UUID, that's as good as anything because it's just going to be random. So, sure.
What if we just called it? What if we just called it bucket access UUID or something? Just there's no doubt at that point. Just bucket access ID. I don't know.
No, I like name. I like name because then Cozy can use it for, can do it like this, but in principle, some other client of this gRPC could have a different scheme, and it's not prescriptive, right? It just says, give me a string that's going to be used for idempotency, and that may get stamped on the underlying object, depending on the implementation of the driver.
No, but this is something that Cozy itself, creates or comes up with based on
sidecar
the bucket
does,
access.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying a different gRPC client that was not Cozy could just do something else and it would still work.
With a Cozy driver, you mean?
Right. And again, I'm thinking, when CSI was designed, it wasn't designed for Kubernetes exclusively. Right. It turned out that no one else has written CSI clients, but one could imagine something similar with Cozy, where alternative implementations could show up someday.
I think we might be working on a problem that is out of scope at this point. The reason I say that is, I think with Bucket API specifically, we said this is just for Kubernetes and not for all container orchestrators. So in that sense, it might be okay to not design for any orchestrator.
Yeah. We don't need
Mhm.
to have that as a first level concern. I'm just saying I
Mhm.
like account name. It works for
Mhm.
idempotency key. So
Okay. I think the confusion with account name is people start wondering where it comes from. Would it be easier to, I mean, just if we called it something like bucket access UUID, just that, then there's no confusion. Nobody has to figure out where this field came from, what it means. We could even call it idempotency key.
Just
yeah,
bucket
this is a very
access,
long and hard to
bucket
spell
access
word.
name, bucket access name, and bucket access ID.
Yeah, that would do. Bucket access name and bucket access ID. That'll do. Yeah. Access name and access ID. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay. All right. So let's just decide on one name for the field and we'll go with it. Do we need a bucket access name? Can we not just do it bucket access ID?
But then you have in the response, you have a different field, right? Then how do you name this other one?
Account ID. I see.
Yeah, the reason I
Okay.
was thinking, you have a name, you have an ID, just corresponding.
Good point. Yeah. Okay. Account. Fair enough. So you're going to call it bucket access name and bucket access ID?
Right, because
We
this
don't.
example, you're using the UUID, but these two can be different, right? So that's the whole point of using two different names.
So if the purpose of this field is just to act as the idempotency key, can we not just call it idempotency key?
So strange.
You could.
It
It's
is
just.
strange.
It's a long and hard to spell word.
Yeah,
People will make
Right.
hard to
typos.
spell.
Right. And also the other concern I see is in the driver API, we're really exposing a implementation detail, which isn't generally good.
No, I don't. I think you just document the gRPC layer, what the field is, where it comes from, and what it's meant to do.
Okay.
And then people, I mean, this has never been a problem on the CSI side, I don't think. We have
Okay.
volume names, we have snapshot names, that they happen to contain weird UUIDs. Some people use them to stamp them on the underlying storage system. Some people just ignore them. Some people, you can do whatever you want with it. But
Okay,
it's
fair enough.
clear, but the spec clearly says if you get another call with the same value, it's a retry and treat it as such.
Fair enough. Okay. So I think I think I understand what you mean, Ben. I think the cap can, explain where it comes from a little better. I think that would resolve everything rather than rename the field, right?
Yeah, the name is fine. You could pick a different name.
Okay. I
Not a big deal.
I understand that. Yeah. I think we can go with account name then, because discussion about names, yeah, they can take a long time and we might end up nowhere. Okay, so I will update how I describe what this field is supposed to do. All right, that should solve that problem. I think there was a question about quota restriction on bucket access and bucket classes. I can't fully remember what we decided on this one. I'm going to quickly scroll down and see if there are any other questions too. Okay. I think that's about it. That was the last one. So the question is, right. So what about new features? When are we going to? I think it's just like, what are the next features? I think that's what she's asking. I think this is more of a planning question. This is not technical. I think I can answer this. Yeah, I think it looks like quota and restrictions. Well, bucket quota itself, that would include the restrictions part, seems to be a popular request for a feature. Let's get this kept merged and we can start looking at that. Um, yeah, it has to be designed in through the API. The admin would have to have some mechanism to enforce it or specify it, and Cozy will have to enforce it. Um, I'm okay with talking about this after we get the kept merged. Yeah, we don't want to add on more things before it's like counting the chickens before they hatch kind of thing. Um, yeah, so that's all was in my mind. These are all the things I wanted to go over again and have it resolved. And I think I'm clear on what needs to be updated in the kept. Um, unless there's something else someone wants to bring up, I can go ahead and update the kept and ping Michelle. Um, and that's all I have for today. Does anyone have anything else they want to bring up? Okay. Um, if anyone's trying to reach me, I might be a little late to respond because I'm traveling. But I'll definitely get back to you within a day. Um, yeah, that's about it from my side.
Cool. Thanks, Sid.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.